The room was half lit, drowned in shadows. Lisa Marie Presley was 9 years old when she found her father collapsed on the bathroom floor. She didn't scream. She didn't cry right away. She just stood there, staring at that enormous body, the body of the most famous man in the world, lying on cold tiles like he was just anyone, like fame meant nothing, like money couldn't buy even one more second of life. She moved closer, slowly. She touched his shoulder. She felt the cold travel through her fingers, and in that instant she understood something that would haunt her for the rest of her life. That being close to the sun doesn't save you from getting burned. That being the king's daughter doesn't make you a princess. That inheriting a last name also means inheriting a curse. That day, August 16th, 1977, not only did Elvis Presley die, the illusion died too. The illusion that love could protect her. The childhood of a little girl died, a girl who had just lost the only man she trusted. And something much worse began, the countdown of a family tragedy that would take decades to fully consume itself, but was already written into the walls of Graceland. What no one knew back then, what the world wouldn't understand until much later, is that Elvis Presley left more than music behind. He left children, several children, some recognized, others denied, some raised in mansions, others in the shadows. And all of them, absolutely all of them, condemned to carry a weight no one should ever have to carry. The weight of being descended from a myth who was never completely human. And there are documents, buried testimonies that stayed hidden for decades, photographs that were never published, letters the Presley family paid to destroy. This video reveals what the empire doesn't want you to know. To understand what happened to them, we have to go back. Elvis Aaron Presley was born in Tupelo, Mississippi in 1935, the son of Vernon and Gladys Presley, poor, so poor that on the day he was born, his twin brother was born too. Jesse Guerin and Jesse died at birth. Elvis grew up knowing there was an empty space inside him, shaped like another person, that he had to live for two, that the void was there, at the center of everything, from the very beginning. Gladys adored him. She protected him. She slept with him until he was a teenager. She whispered to him that he was special, that he was meant for something big. And Elvis, in a way, never fully stepped out of that embrace. When she died in 1958, he broke completely shattered. He cried over her coffin. He screamed that he wanted to die with her, and a part of him did. When years later he met Priscilla Beaulieu, he wasn't looking for a wife. He was looking for another mother. Priscilla was 14 when Elvis, already a 24-year-old superstar, met her in Germany. He was doing military service, and she was the daughter of an Air Force officer. They began a relationship that today would be unthinkable, and even then it was. But nobody dared to stop it because Elvis was Elvis. He shaped her. He told her how to dress, how to do her makeup, how to speak. And Priscilla, barely a teenager, didn't really have a choice. She became what he wanted. They married in 1967, and from that union, Lisa Marie Presley was born on February 1968, exactly 9 months after the wedding. But before we keep going with Lisa Marie, you need to know something that changes everything. Because Lisa Marie wasn't Elvis Presley's only child. In 1958, the same year Gladys died, Elvis met a woman at a diner. Her name was Lucy. She served coffee to truckers and travelers. One night Elvis walked in, ordered coffee. Lucy didn't recognize him right away. When she realized who he was, she almost dropped the cup. Elvis smiled. He signed an autograph on a napkin. He asked her what time her shift ended. It ended at 11. At 11:05, she was in Elvis's hotel room. 9 months later, Lucy gave birth to a girl. She named her Desire, and throughout Desire's entire childhood, she told her the same story. Your father is Elvis Presley, the king of rock, the most famous man in the world. But you can't tell anyone, because if you do, we'll lose everything. Desire grew up watching Elvis on TV, hearing his songs on the radio, seeing the world worship him, knowing that maybe, just maybe, that man was her father. But she could never get close. She could never shout that she was his daughter. She could never claim a single minute of his time, not a dollar of his fortune, not a word of recognition. When Elvis died in 1977, Desire was 19. She didn't go to the funeral. She had no right. She didn't officially exist. but she cried. She cried the way you only cry when you lose someone you never truly had. Years later, in the 1990s, Desire decided to speak. She contacted lawyers. She asked for DNA testing. She presented photos, testimonies, letters her mother had kept for decades. But the Presley family refused. Always refused. And Desire isn't the only one. A man named Timothy claims he's Elvis's son, born in 1956 from a relationship Elvis supposedly had before fame. Deborah says the same, and there are others, at least 3 more, whose names were never made public. People living with the suspicion, the possibility, the weight of a secret that might be true, or might be nothing more than a desperate need to belong to something bigger. But here's what nobody has told you. There's a document, a private report commissioned by Colonel Tom Parker, Elvis's manager, in 1972. That report identified at least 4 possible illegitimate children and recommended discreet payments to the mothers to keep them quiet. The document disappeared from official files, but a leaked copy circulated in the 90s among Elvis memorabilia collectors. The Presley family never officially acknowledged it, but they didn't deny it strongly enough either. That's not a coincidence. Meanwhile, Lisa Marie was growing up in Graceland. There were always people around: bodyguards, cooks, musicians, the Memphis Mafia, that group of men who surrounded Elvis constantly, who laughed at his jokes, who got him pills, who did everything he asked without questioning anything. And in the middle of all that chaos, a little girl trying to find her father. Elvis adored her, or at least he said he did. He called her Buttonhead. He bought her ponies. But Elvis's love was erratic, intense, and absent. He would hold her tight and then disappear for days, locked in his room, swallowing pills, watching TV. Lisa Marie learned very young that her father's love had hours, that there were moments when she could go to him and moments when it was safer to stay away. She learned to read his moods. That's not childhood. That's survival. She saw things no child should ever see. She saw her father stumbling. She saw pills scattered everywhere. She saw women coming and going, even though her mother no longer lived there. Priscilla left in 1972 when Lisa Marie was only 4. She couldn't take the constant infidelity anymore, and Lisa Marie was caught in the middle, living between 2 houses, between 2 worlds. But what Lisa Marie didn't know then, what she wouldn't discover until years later, was that she had brothers and sisters, siblings she never met. Siblings who grew up with the same last name in their hearts, but not on paper. Siblings who watched her from far away, from television, from magazines, wondering if she would ever know they existed. And that ignorance, that forced separation, is the first part of the Presley curse. After Elvis died, Priscilla took control of Graceland. She became the guardian of the legacy and the mother who had to raise a traumatized child alone. Lisa Marie didn't talk much. She didn't cry in public. But inside she was falling apart because she had seen things no child should see. And now he was dead and she was alive. And she didn't know how to process that. At 9 years old, Lisa Marie became the heir to a $200 million empire. But she couldn't touch the money. She couldn't control it. She was trapped inside a trust managed by other people. Rich on paper, poor in freedom. She grew up rebellious, wild, chasing in all the wrong places what she had lost in Graceland. She left home young. She experimented with drugs, with sex, with anything that promised her she could feel something other than the constant emptiness. At 20, she married Keough, a musician. He wasn't famous. He wasn't rich. But he was real, someone who looked at her, not the last name. They had 2 children, Riley, born May 29, 1989, and Benjamin Storm, born October 21, 1992. And this is where the curse began to show itself in the next generation. Benjamin Keough had Elvis's eyes, the same face, the same jaw, the same lost look. It was like the past had returned to live inside another body. Lisa Marie would look at him and feel terror because she knew what it meant to resemble her father that much. She knew Benjamin didn't just inherit the features, he inherited the darkness. Benjamin grew up in Los Angeles. Materially privileged, big house, private schools, exotic vacations, but emotionally hollow. He didn't want to be famous. He didn't want to be recognized. He didn't want to be compared, but it was impossible. Every time he went out, someone would say, "That kid looks like Elvis." He tried to do music. He signed a recording contract worth millions when he was barely 20. People expected him to be the second coming of Elvis. But Benjamin didn't have that. Or maybe he did, but fear was stronger. Fear of failing, fear of not measuring up. So he never released anything, never recorded, never stepped on a stage. He froze inside that contract, inside that promise, inside a future that never arrived. And in the meantime, depression grew. It swallowed him slowly. It stole his sleep, his appetite, his desire to live. But before we get to what happened to Benjamin, there's something else you need to know, something that connects directly to that document I mentioned earlier. In 2004, a woman named Elisa Brooks appeared on a late-night TV show. She claimed she was Elvis Presley's daughter. She said her mother had worked as a waitress in a Las Vegas hotel in 1969, that Elvis stayed there for 3 weeks, that they had a relationship, and that 9 months later she was born. Elisa didn't have solid proof. No letters, no photos, just her mother's testimony. Her mother had already died, and her face, a face that, if you squinted, could resemble Elvis. Or maybe not. Maybe it was just the need to see what we want to see. The Presley family never responded officially, but 2 weeks after her TV appearance, she received a call. A family lawyer offered her $250,000. In exchange, she had to sign a non-disclosure agreement. She had to stop speaking publicly. She had to disappear. Elisa accepted. She signed. And no one ever heard from her again. Why would the family pay if there was nothing to hide? Why buy the silence of someone who's lying? That question was never answered, but the pattern repeated at least 3 more times in the years that followed. People claiming to be Elvis's children, going public, getting calls from lawyers, signing documents, disappearing. The Presley empire wasn't protecting the truth. It was buying silence. Let's go back to Benjamin, because what happened to him is the core of this entire tragedy. It's where all the lines of pain that started with Elvis converge. Benjamin was 26 when he began talking openly about suicide, not with therapists, not with family, but with strangers in bars, with casual friends. He'd say things like, "I don't know if I want to be here. Sometimes I feel like I was born in the wrong place. Everyone expects me to be someone I'm not." Lisa Marie knew. She watched her son suffer. She paid for the best therapists, private clinics, everything money could buy. But you can't buy the will to live. You can't buy peace of mind. On July 12, 2020, Benjamin Keough locked himself in the bathroom of his mother's house in Calabasas, California. He took out a gun, put it in his mouth, and pulled the trigger. He was 27 years old. His mother was in the house. She heard the shot, ran, burst into the bathroom, and saw him, her son, her baby, her Benjamin, lying on the floor in a pool of blood. She dropped to the ground, wrapping herself around his body, screaming, crying, begging him to come back. The news exploded across every outlet. Elvis Presley's grandson dies by suicide, as if his death were just a footnote in someone else's legend. Lisa Marie was devastated, completely broken. She had lost her father as a child. Now she lost her son as a mother. And Lisa Marie did something many people found disturbing. She kept Benjamin's body in her home for 2 months on dry ice because she couldn't let him go, because she needed time to say goodbye. In the end, she let him go and buried him at Graceland beside Elvis. And then something happened that almost nobody noticed. 3 days after Benjamin's funeral, Desire Presley posted a message on social media. It said, "I just lost my nephew and I never got to meet him. I never got to tell him he wasn't alone, that he had family who loved him even if we couldn't get close, that Elvis's blood isn't a curse, it's just blood. And we could have saved each other if they had let us." That message went viral for a few hours. Then it vanished, deleted. Desire's account was suspended. When it came back days later, there was no trace of that post. Someone didn't want that connection to become public. And this is the center of everything, the point where all the tragedies collide. Because what killed Benjamin wasn't only depression, it was isolation. It was growing up knowing he was Elvis's grandson, but never being allowed to just be Benjamin. It was constant pressure, endless comparison, and it was something else too. It was growing up inside a family where secrets were the rule, where there were siblings who couldn't meet, where the name Presley was, at the same time, a shield and a prison. If Benjamin had met Desire, would it have changed something? If he had known there were others like him, others carrying the same weight, others who understood the same loneliness, would he have found a reason to stay? We don't know. We'll never know. But what we do know is this. The Presley family chose secrecy over connection. They chose protecting the image over protecting people. And that choice had consequences. Lisa Marie tried to keep going after Benjamin's death. She wrote, she spoke publicly about grief. She did interviews where she broke down crying as she remembered her son. She tried to turn her suffering into something useful, something that could help other parents living through the same nightmare. But the weight was too much. The guilt was unbearable. She asked herself again and again if she could have done something differently. Depression ate at her. Painkillers did too. She had developed an opioid addiction after surgery years earlier. And after Benjamin died, that addiction got worse because physical pain was easier to manage than emotional pain. She fought it. Rehab, relapse, another attempt, another fall, another attempt, because she still had other daughters. Riley, already an adult, and the twins, Harper and Finley, who still needed her. The twins were born from her fourth marriage to Michael Lockwood, Harper Vivian Ann, and Finley Aaron Love, on October 7, 2008. Lisa Marie protected them fiercely. She didn't want them to live what she lived. She didn't want them carrying the full weight of the name. She kept them away from the spotlight. And then January 2023 arrived. On January 10, 2023, Lisa Marie Presley attended the Golden Globes. She was there to support Austin Butler, the actor who had played her father in Baz Luhrmann's film. Lisa Marie had watched the movie many times, and she cried every time because it felt like seeing her father again. Austin Butler had captured something essential, not just the voice or the moves, but the soul, the pain, the loneliness. At the Globes, Lisa Marie looked fragile, exhausted, but she was there smiling for cameras, posing with Austin, hugging Priscilla, her mother, doing the role. In photos from that night, you can see her gripping her mother's hand. You can see the wetness in her eyes. You can see her trying to stay standing. 2 days later, January 12, 2023, Lisa Marie collapsed at her home in Calabasas. Cardiac arrest. Her assistant found her unconscious in her bedroom and called 911. Paramedics arrived, performed CPR, revived her briefly, rushed her to the hospital, but it wasn't enough. At 10:37 a.m., Lisa Marie Presley was pronounced dead. She was 54, and with her, the last direct line to Elvis died. But here's where the story takes a turn nobody expected. Because in the days after Lisa Marie's death, strange things began to surface. First came an article on a small Elvis memorabilia blog. It talked about a safe deposit box Lisa Marie had rented at a Memphis bank, a box nobody knew about, not listed in any of her official documents. The article was deleted hours after it went up, but people had already captured it, archived it. Then came an anonymous post on an Elvis fan forum, someone claiming they had worked at Graceland in the 1980s. They said Lisa Marie had found letters from women. Women writing to Elvis saying they had his children, that they needed help, that they needed recognition. That post disappeared too. And finally, 2 weeks after Lisa Marie's funeral, Desire Presley gave an interview to an independent podcast. She said Lisa Marie had contacted her in 2019. She'd emailed her. She wanted to meet. She wanted to know the truth. She was tired of secrets. Desire said they met once in a cafe in Santa Monica. They talked for 3 hours. Lisa Marie cried. She apologized. She said she didn't know, and that when she finally discovered she might have siblings, it was already too late. The empire had grown too big. The lawyers were too powerful. The legacy mattered more than people. And Lisa Marie told her something else, something Desire says she'll never forget. She said, "Sometimes I think Dad cursed all of us, that his love was so big and so broken that he passed the fracture on to us. And now we're all broken, and I don't know if we'll ever be able to fix ourselves." 3 years after that conversation, Lisa Marie was dead. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe the weight of discovering the truth was too much. Maybe realizing she had siblings she never met, real family beyond the chaos of Graceland, was the final drop. They buried her at Graceland. Of course they did. Beside Elvis, beside Benjamin. Riley Keough organized the funeral. She read a poem. She spoke about her mother in a voice that cracked with every word. She said Lisa Marie was the strongest woman she'd ever known, that she fought demons no one saw. The twins were there too, Harper and Finley, 14 years old, watching their mother being buried. And in the back, almost invisible, was Desire Presley. No one recognized her. No one knew who she was. But she was there, crying for the sister she never got to have. And this is where everything gets even more complicated. Lisa Marie left a will, several actually, and in one of them, written in 2016, she removed Priscilla as trustee and co-trustee of her estate. She replaced her with Riley and Benjamin. But Benjamin was already dead, so everything fell into Riley's hands. Priscilla didn't accept it. She challenged the will. She said Lisa Marie's signature had been forged. A legal war exploded, mother versus granddaughter, over money, power, and the right to decide what Graceland is, what Elvis is, what the name Presley is. The media covered it like pure scandal. War over Elvis Presley's inheritance. But what nobody reported is that during that legal battle, other claimants appeared, people who said they were Elvis's children, demanding to be included in the estate, demanding DNA tests, and every single one of them was rejected. All of them. In the end, Riley and Priscilla reached an agreement. Riley took control. Priscilla received a financial settlement. Everyone signed. Everyone smiled for cameras. But the wounds stayed, and the unrecognized children remained out there, watching from a distance. Riley Keough is now the heir to everything. She's 35. She's an actress. She's worked in major films, Mad Max, Fury Road, Zola. She built a career of her own, but she also carries the weight of being the last Presley with a public voice. And it isn't easy, because every time she does an interview, they ask about Elvis, about her mother, about her brother. Never about her, always about the ghost. Riley has spoken very little about Benjamin's death, very little about her mother's death. She's private. She protects her pain. She married Ben Smith Peterson in 2015. They had a daughter in 2022, a little girl whose name they haven't revealed, because they're determined to give her something no one in the Presley family has had for 3 generations: privacy. And maybe that's the only way to break the curse, by protecting what matters, by choosing silence over spectacle. Harper and Finley Lockwood, the twins, are now 16. They're growing up away from the spotlight. No interviews, no public social media. They're trying to be normal. Their father, Michael Lockwood, has custody. He shields them from paparazzi. He keeps them far from everything that killed their mother and their brother. But there's something nobody knows. In 2023, not long after Lisa Marie's death, Harper asked her father about Desire. She asked if it was true she had an aunt she never met, if there were other Presleys out there in the world. Michael didn't know what to say. He told her it was complicated, that there were stories that might never be known with certainty. Harper said, "But why? Why can't we know? Why do we have to live with secrets?" And Michael had no answer, because that's the real question, the question no one in the Presley family has ever been able to answer. Why is the legacy more important than the truth? Why is the image more valuable than people? And is there more? You're thinking what I know you're thinking. How many children did Elvis really have? The official answer is 1, Lisa Marie. End of story. But the real answer is, we don't know, and we probably never will, because Elvis had affairs with hundreds of women, literally hundreds, in every city, on every tour, in every hotel. Some lasted a night, some lasted weeks, a few lasted months. And in the 1950s and 60s, contraception wasn't what it is today. Unplanned pregnancies were common, and women who got pregnant by famous men had few options. They could get an abortion if they had access and money. They could have the baby and raise it alone. Or they could try to contact the father and hope for some kind of support. Many tried. Many wrote to Elvis. Many told him they were pregnant, that they needed help. And Colonel Tom Parker handled those cases, quietly, sometimes with money, sometimes with threats, sometimes by ignoring them until they went away. That 1972 document I mentioned, the one identifying 4 possible children, wasn't exhaustive. It was only what Parker considered credible enough to require attention. There were others, dozens of others that never reached that level of verification. How many were real? How many were opportunists chasing money? We don't know. But what we do know is that the Presley family has spent millions on lawyers, millions on non-disclosure agreements, millions on keeping the secret. And that says something. Graceland still stands. Every year, hundreds of thousands of people visit. They see Elvis's jumpsuits, his guitars, his gold records. They take photos beside his grave. But what they don't see, what they can't see, is what that house really represents. It isn't just a museum, it's a mausoleum. A place where not only bodies were buried, but secret stories, truths that never made it into the light. Lisa Marie is buried there now, beside Elvis, beside Benjamin family, reunited in death in a way they never truly were in life. And now Riley has to decide what to do with all of it. Preserve it as a museum, transform it, sell it. There are rumors Riley wants changes, that she wants to modernize Graceland, that she wants to tell a more complete story of Elvis's story that includes not only his greatness, but also his flaws, his humanity, his darkness. But she faces resistance, Priscilla, the purists, the fans who want Elvis kept as a myth, not as a man. And so the cycle continues. The next generation trying to decide what to do with the weight of the ones before them. Let's go back to Elvis for a moment, because there's something essential we have to understand. Elvis wasn't a bad man. He wasn't a villain. He didn't abandon his children out of malice. He was a human being trapped inside a life that spun out of his control. He grew up poor, then he became rich. He grew up unknown. Then he became the most famous man in the world. And he didn't know how to handle it because nobody taught him. The pills started as something medical to sleep after concerts, to wake up when he had to record, for back pain, and they ended up being the only thing keeping him standing. The women were a way to fill the void, to feel desired, to forget how alone he was. And the children, recognized and unrecognized, were consequences of that loneliness. They weren't born from love. They were born from emptiness. Does that make him less responsible? No, but it makes him more human. Elvis was 21 when he became famous. 21. Imagine being 21, and suddenly you're the most famous man in the world. Millions screaming your name, women fainting when you walk by, infinite money, infinite power, and not a single skill to manage it, because no one prepares you for that. There's no school for being a living God. And Elvis tried in his own way. He did. He loved Lisa Marie. He called her every day when he was on tour. He bought her extravagant gifts. He told her she was the most important thing in his life. But actions didn't match words because Elvis didn't know how to be a father. His own father, Vernon, had been absent, weak, dependent. Elvis had no model, no reference point. So he did the only thing he knew. He gave things, money, gifts, promises. But you can't build a relationship out of that. You can't fill a child's emptiness with toys. Now think about this. What happens when you inherit not only money, but trauma? What happens when your last name is a synonym for greatness and also destruction? Lisa Marie tried. She married 4 times searching for something she never found. Danny Keough, Michael Jackson, Nicolas Cage, Michael Lockwood. 4 attempts at building a family that worked. Michael Jackson was especially revealing. 2 children of legends. 2 people who grew up without a childhood. They understood each other. They protected each other. But love isn't enough when 2 broken people try to hold each other up. Nicolas Cage was a flash 3 months of marriage. A romantic madness that ended as quickly as it began. And Benjamin, her son, couldn't do it either, because sadness gets inherited. Not in your genes, but in patterns in the way you learn to see the world. Pain gets passed down. There's a question nobody dares to ask out loud, but everyone thinks it. Did Elvis Presley ruin his children's lives? The answer is complicated. Yes, because his absence created holes no one could fill. Because his addiction normalized self-destruction. Because his fame turned his children into public objects. Because he died in a way that scarred Lisa Marie forever. But also no, because Elvis gave them things too. resources, opportunities, a name that opens doors, music that's still alive. And that duality is the cruelest part, because you can't reject the legacy without rejecting yourself. You can't renounce the last name without renouncing your identity. You get trapped in a paradox. Riley Keough gave an interview not long ago. They asked her what it meant to be Elvis's granddaughter. She said, "It means carrying something beautiful and terrible at the same time. It means having a history before you have a life. It means my brother is dead and my mother is dead and I'm still here wondering why." She paused. "It means that every day I wake up and I have to decide whether the Presley name is a gift or a curse. And some days it's both." That answer was raw, honest, painful, and powerful because it cracked the image. It showed that behind the last name, there are people suffering. There's something else we need to talk about: mental health, suicide, addiction, everything that killed this family. Because if the Presley story teaches us anything, it's that money doesn't buy happiness. Fame doesn't fill emptiness. Elvis died surrounded by luxury, but completely alone. Lisa Marie lived in mansions, but felt like a prisoner. Benjamin had millions, but didn't have reasons to live. And all of it happened because they never treated the real problems. Because in the celebrity world, going to therapy looked like weakness. Admitting you needed help looked like failure. Benjamin needed help. He looked for it. But it wasn't enough because the system is broken, because therapy doesn't always work, because some wounds are so deep no medicine can close them. And that's the most terrifying thing. Sometimes you do everything right and you still lose. Sometimes you love with all your strength and it still isn't enough. We're getting close to the end, but there are two more revelations you need to know. The first, in 2021, 1 year after Benjamin's death, a video appeared on YouTube. It was less than 3 minutes long. It was Benjamin speaking to the camera. He was in his room. He looked tired, sad. He said, "If you're watching this, it probably already happened. I'm probably not here anymore. And I want you to know it's nobody's fault. It's not my mom's fault. It's not my dad's fault. It's not Elvis's fault. Though sometimes I feel like it is. It's just that I don't fit here. I never fit. And I'm tired of pretending that I do." The video stayed online for 6 hours. Then it disappeared, deleted. The account that uploaded it was shut down. Lisa Marie never spoke about that video publicly, but people who knew her say she watched it, that she cried for days, that she blamed herself for not knowing it existed, for not finding it sooner, for not being able to do something. That video is the clearest proof that Benjamin knew what he was going to do, that it wasn't an impulse, that it was a thought-out decision, and somehow that makes everything more painful. The second revelation: in March 2024, 14 months after Lisa Marie's death, a book was announced. An unauthorized Elvis biography written by an investigative journalist. The book included interviews with more than 50 people who claimed to be Elvis's children or grandchildren. The book never made it to bookstores. 2 days before release, the publisher received a court order. The Presley family sued for defamation, invasion of privacy, damage to Elvis's legacy. The book was pulled. The copies already printed were destroyed. The author received legal threats. The book never saw daylight. Why? What was in that book that was so dangerous? According to leaks, it included detailed testimonies, dates, places, names, and suggested Elvis may have had up to 12 unrecognized children. 12? Is it true? We don't know because the book was censored before anyone could verify it. But the fact the Presley family spent millions to suppress it says something. It says there are things they don't want you to know, truths they would rather keep buried. And now we reach the final question. What happens now to Elvis's children? Riley is trying to live her life, to build something beyond the last name, to protect her daughter from all of this. She has said she wants to break the cycle, that she wants her daughter to grow up without the weight of being Elvis's great-grandchild, that she wants to give her the childhood she never had. Harper and Finley are growing up quietly protected, distant. Their father keeps them out of the public eye, takes them to therapy regularly, helps them process the trauma of losing their mother and their brother. He tells them the Presley name is just that, a name, and it doesn't define who they are. And the unrecognized children desire, Timothy, the others whose names we never learned, are still out there living their lives. Some have stopped fighting. They've accepted they'll never be recognized. Others still wait, still believe that one day the truth will come out. Desire Presley is now 66. She lives in Mississippi, works as a nurse, has children, grandchildren, a full life. But she never stopped knowing she's Elvis's daughter, and it never stopped hurting that nobody acknowledges it. In a recent interview, she said, "I don't want the money. It was never about money. I just want someone to look me in the eyes and say, yes, you're his daughter. Yes, you're part of this family. That's all. I just want to exist." And maybe that's the greatest tragedy of all, that there are people carrying Elvis Presley's blood, carrying his legacy in their cells, in their faces, in their souls, and they have no right to say it, no right to exist as Presley. Elvis Presley left an enormous musical legacy, songs that are still played. Heartbreak Hotel, Hound Dog, Can't Help Falling in Love, melodies that are part of our culture. He left an image still worshipped: the white jumpsuit, the sideburns, the hips. But he also left pain. He left emptiness. He left children who grew up without him, who struggled with his absence, who paid the price of his greatness, who died too young. And that's what nobody tells you when they talk about legends. Nobody talks about the cost. What gets sacrificed? Who gets left behind while the world applauds? But it matters, because behind every myth there's a family, and behind every family there are stories that deserve to be told. So who are Elvis Presley's children? They are Lisa Marie, who spent her life trying to understand her father and ended up dying the same way he did, too young, with a broken heart. They are Benjamin, who looked so much like Elvis that he couldn't find his own identity. They are Riley, fighting to keep a memory alive without letting that memory kill her. They are Harper and Finley, only now starting to understand what it means to carry that name. They are Desire, in Timothy, and all the others who may carry his blood but not his last name. They're people with their own stories, their own pain, their own dreams that have nothing to do with rock and roll, and they deserve to be remembered not only as heirs to a legend, but as human beings who did the best they could, with a burden they never should have had to carry. One last thing, a question that might be circling in your head. What would have happened if Elvis had lived longer? Would anything have changed? Would he have been a better father? Would he have met his grandchildren? Would he have recognized his other children? We don't know, and we never will. But what we do know is that death doesn't close stories. It only pauses them. And the consequences of our actions keep living long after we're gone. Elvis died in 1977, but his story is still being written in Riley, in Harper, in Finley, in everyone who carries his blood. And maybe that's the real curse. Not that the Presley name is doomed, but that it will never finish telling its story. That every generation will have to carry a new chapter. If you made it this far, thank you for staying, for listening, for not looking away. Because this isn't only the Presley story, it's the story of every family living under the shadow of something bigger than them, of every child growing up comparing themselves to an unreachable parent, of everyone who inherits not only assets, but trauma. And the real question is, how do we break those patterns? How do we stop repeating the mistakes of the ones who came before? How do we build something new without destroying what we were? Maybe the first step is talking, telling the whole truth, not just the pretty version. Stopping the idealization of those who came before us and starting to see them as what they were. Human, imperfect, broken, capable of greatness and destruction. Because only when we accept someone in their entirety can we truly understand them. And only when we understand can we begin to heal. And now, before I go, I want to leave you with a question. What if I told you there's another family in another corner of the world that lived exactly the same thing? A father who became a legend, children who grew up in his shadow, a legacy that turned into a curse, secrets nobody dared to tell, deaths that could have been prevented, siblings separated by lawyers and money. Would you want to meet them? Because the stories of families broken by fame don't end with the Presleys. There are more, many more, and each one reveals something about the real price of success, about what it costs to become a legend, about who pays that price. If you want to keep discovering these stories nobody else tells, subscribe, turn on notifications, because this is only the beginning. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, remember, behind every legend there's a truth. And that truth is almost always more complicated, more painful, and more human than we ever imagined. Because lies make us feel comfortable, but only the truth makes us free.